Hello, Elizabeth here, and today I'm going to show you how I bedazzled this very unique pumpkin crossbody bag. My dear friend Tina just had a birthday and she's into all things horror and Halloween, but also all things glam. So I thought this would be a really fun gift to give to her this year. If you've been watching my videos for any amount of time, you've definitely seen Tina in my comments. She is my biggest supporter. She comments on and watches all of my content, and I appreciate her so much. Tina, I tell you this all the time, but you are truly the best. I'm gonna walk you through everything step by step. I started with this purple pumpkin crossbody bag that's made out of a faux leather material. I used 2, 3, and 4 millimeter black rhinestones, as well as 2, 3, and 5 millimeter purple AB rhinestones. I used E6000 glue and plastic cuticle pusher sticks to apply it. I like to use a wax pencil that can be sharpened to pick up and place my rhinestones. You can find links to all of these products in the description of this video. First, I filled in the black details of the purse, which were the mouth, the eyes, the curved lines, and the stem of the pumpkin. E6000 is an industrial adhesive that is toxic and it's not safe to breathe in the fumes. So I wear an N95 mask and work in a room with the windows open. If you can work outside, that's even better. These projects take several hours, so you want to make sure you're taking the right precautions when you'll be exposed to toxins for long periods of time. I find it looks best to start with the outline when you're filling in shapes. This ensures that there's a nice straight edge and the shape will not look messy. It's much better to have a perfectly filled in outline and have a bit of space left between the inside stones than to have a messy edge. E6000 starts drying pretty quickly, so I like to work in small sections. I'll squeeze a dot out of the tube onto the edge of a cuticle stick and spread a thin layer in the area I'm working. And starting from the outline, I work my way to the inside. With any type of rhinestone project, using mostly your largest size stones will make the job quicker because you're filling more space in less time. And you can also use fewer stones overall because one large stone may be equal to 2 or 3 of your smaller stones. Typically with an outline, I will use a smaller size just to make sure the detail of the edges doesn't get lost. So with this mouth shape, I used my 3 millimeter black stones for the outline and mostly my 4 millimeter black stones to fill in the inside. I used just a few of the smaller ones to fill in any gaps as needed. With the eyes, I did the same thing using my 3 millimeter stones for the outline and some of the larger 4 millimeter stones to fill in the inside. Then I repeated the same thing with the other eye. The curved lines on the pumpkin are quite thin, so I used my 2 millimeter black stones for those details. The lines are dashed in the original pattern, but I wanted to keep them solid. So I just followed the line, filling in all the gaps, placing my stones tightly together side by side. I couldn't get my line of glue to be very thin, so you can see some of that shiny glue on either side of the black line that isn't getting covered in stones right now. That glue dried like this, and then later when I filled in the purple, I had to go over it with another layer of fresh glue, which worked fine, but the purse is double-sided and I did the opposite side as well off camera. And when I did that side, I just took advantage of the thicker line and actually did the purple stones along the 2 edges of the black line at the same time, so that the wet glue wouldn't be wasted. So at this point, I'd recommend using your 3 millimeter purple stones to outline both sides of the black line while you fill in these lines section by section. E6000 glue dries a little bit raised, similar to hot glue from a glue gun. It's 3-dimensional. So that's why I like to use the cuticle stick to spread it out as thin as possible. And if you have to go back over glue that has already dried, you might have it sticking up a little higher than you'd like. So it's not necessarily bad if you have to go over previous glue like I did on this side with these black lines, but it just helps to keep everything more uniform if you don't have to do that. For the stem, I just used my largest 4mm black stones for the entire thing and left a tiny bit of space around the edges to ensure there wouldn't be any overlap of stones sticking out the sides. Once all of my black details were done, it was time to move on to the beautiful purple AB stones. So it's kind of naturally grouped into sections now that I have all the black curved lines in place. Again, I find it easiest to start with the outline and then fill in the middle areas for the cleanest possible look. So to outline my sections, I used mostly my 3mm purple stones. The only exception is when I got to some tighter gaps, for example where the corners of the eyes and the mouth meet the curved black lines. And in those cases, I would use a few of the smallest 2mm purple stones just to fill in those tiny gaps. But mostly my outlines were done with the 3mm stones, and then I used my largest 5mm stones to fill in the inside. Those 5mm stones get the job done so quickly, and I also find that sometimes with really small stones, when you're using E6000, because it's a thicker consistency glue, the tiny stones can kind of sink down into it and get swallowed by it, which does affect their sparkle and shine a little bit. And it can make a bit of a mess on your wax pencil. So the larger 5mm stones are easier to work with and stay cleaner throughout the process. They're also easier to see. Sometimes with E6000, because it's so strong, you can stick a stone anywhere and it will just attach. Whereas with other glues, the flat back of the stone has to be flush against the surface for it to really sit properly. So with E6000, you can easily end up with stones with lifted edges that are sitting on top of each other and you won't even notice because it's stuck right down when you placed it. But it's much more noticeable and fixable with the larger stones. So overall, I just find the bigger stones are easiest to work with when you're using this particular glue. When you're using one size of rhinestone, there's a pattern called the honeycomb method, which involves placing each row of rhinestones in the cracks between the stones in the previous row. So they kind of lock together perfectly, similar to the look of a honeycomb or a brick wall. And that's what I went for when using my 5mm stones, just to keep the gaps as minimal as possible and make quick work of it. But obviously the shape I'm filling in is a bit obscure, so I had to use some smaller stones as I went to fill in gaps around the edges where another 5mm stone would not fit. But for the majority of the remaining space on the bag, I was able to use 5mm stones with a honeycomb placement, with the exception of the outlines being done with 3mm and occasionally 2mm stones. If you do make a mistake with any of your stones, although the glue dries quickly, you can still pry off a stone if you need to for a little while after it has been drying. You may need something sharp like a craft blade to kind of slice through the rubbery glue, and it is messy and leaves behind an ugly mark that you're gonna need to cover up with a fresh stone. So if it's in a place that you don't want to have a stone at all, you may be out of luck because it will likely cause irreversible damage. But if, for example, you placed a stone that was too big and it got stuck kind of sideways, you should still be able to pry off that stone and replace it with a smaller one that will fit in the gap. Be very careful when prying off the glue with a sharp tool because it is pretty tough. Once the glue has been drying for at least 24 hours, it does get super strong and you may not be able to pry things off anymore. So before you leave a work session on your project, just do a quick look over to make sure nothing is out of place and make any adjustments you need to while the glue is still fresh. Once my entire purse was rhinestoned, I let this side dry and then did the exact same thing all over again on the other side of the purse. And here is the final result. This was my first time rhinestoning a purse, and I think it came out so great. What a fun accessory. E6000 is super strong. I've used it on shoes which have been worn in all kinds of weather, and I've never lost a rhinestone. So I really trust it with frequently handled items like a purse, and I'm not worried that anything is going to fall off even with regular use. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment letting me know what sort of projects you'd like to see in the future. See you later!